Chapter 13. This Way and That Way. "Serpent, I say again," repeated the pigeon, and added with a kind of sob, "I've tried every way, and nothing seems to suit them." "I haven't the least idea what you're talking about," said Alice. "I've tried the roots of trees, and I've tried banks, and I've tried hedges," the pigeon went on without attending to her. "But those serpents, there's no pleasing them." Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. "And what," inquired Lord Peter of Bunter the following morning, "did the superintendent want last night?" "He wished to ascertain, my lord, whether the hanging cactus could have been removed from its containing pot during the events of last week." "What again?" "I thought he'd realised that it couldn't. The marks of the brass polish should have told him that with half an eye. No need to get the step-ladder and bump around at midnight like a bumblebee in a bottle." "Quite so, my lord. But I thought it better not to intervene, and your lordship wished him to have every facility." "Oh, quite. His brain works like the mills of God, but he has some other divine qualities. I know him to be magnanimous, and suspect him of being merciful. He is trying hard to exonerate Selim. Well, that's natural enough, but he's attacking the strong side instead of the weak side of the case against him. What do you think about Selim yourself, Peter?" They had breakfasted upstairs. Harriet was dressed, smoking a cigarette in the window. Peter, in the half-way dressing-gown stage, was warming the back of his legs at the fire. The ginger cat had arrived to pay its morning compliment, and had taken up a position on his shoulder. "I don't know what to think. The fact is, we've got dashed little material for thinking with. It's probably too early for thinking. Selim doesn't look like a murderer. Well, they very often don't, you know. He didn't look either like the sort of man who would tell me a thundering great lie, except for a very good reason. And people do tell lies when they're frightened. I suppose he didn't notice till after he'd said that about the clock that it implied having been inside the house. No, you've got to be a very sharp-witted person to see ahead when you're telling half-truths. The story that's a lie from beginning to end will be consistent, and since he obviously hadn't meant to tell the story of the quarrel at all, he had to make up his mind on the spur of the moment. The thing that's bothering me is, how did Selim get into the house? Noakes must have left him in. Just so. Here is an elderly man, locked up alone in a house. Up comes a young man, big and strong, and in a murderous rage, and quarrels with him, using strong language and possible threats. The old man tells him off and bangs the window shut. The young man goes on knocking at the doors and trying to get in. The old man has nothing to gain by admitting him, yet he does it, and obligingly turns his back on him on purpose that the angry young man may attack him with a blunt instrument. It is possible, but, as Aristotle might say, it is an improbable possible. Suppose Selim said he had got the money after all, and Noakes let him in and sat down to write a... No, he wouldn't write a receipt, of course, nothing on paper, unless Selim threatened him. If Selim had the money, Noakes could have told him to hand it through the window. Well, suppose he did hand it in, or said he was going to. Then when Noakes opened the window, Selim could have climbed in himself. Or could he? Those mullions are pretty narrow. "You can have no idea," said Peter irrelevantly, "how refreshing it is to talk to somebody who has a grasp of method. The police are excellent fellows, but the only principle of detection they have really grasped is that wretched phrase, cui bono. They will hear off after motive, which is a matter for psychologists. Juries are just the same. If they can see a motive, they tend to convict, however often the judge may tell them that there's no need to prove motive, and that motive by itself will never make a case. You've got to show how the thing was done, and then, if you like, bring in motive to back up your proof. If a thing could only have been done one way, and if only one person could have done it that way, then you've got your criminal, motive or no motive. There's how, when, where, why, and who. And when you've got how, you've got who. Thus spake Zarathustra. I seem to have married my only intelligent reader. That's the way you construct it from the other end, of course. Artistically, it's absolutely right. I have noticed that what's right in art is usually right in practice. In fact, nature is a confirmed plagiarist of art, as somebody has observed. Go on with your theory, only do remember that to guess how a job might have been done isn't the same thing as proving that it was done that way. If you will allow me to say so, that is a distinction which people of your profession are very liable to overlook. They will confuse moral certainty with legal proof. I shall throw something at you in a minute. I say, do you think something might have been thrown at Noakes? Through the window? Oh, bother. Oh, now I've got two theories at once. No, wait. Sellen gets Noakes to open the window and then starts to climb in. You didn't answer about those mullions. Well, I think I could climb in through them, but then I'm rather narrow in the shoulders compared with Sellen. But on the principle that where your head can go, your body can follow, I dare say he could manage it. Not very quickly, and not without giving Noakes plenty of warning of his intentions. That's where the throwing comes in. Suppose Sellen started to climb, and Noakes got alarmed and made for the door. Then Sellen might snatch up something. What? That's true. He would scarcely have brought a stone or anything on purpose. He might have picked one up in the garden before he came back to the window. Or, no, I know, that paperweight on the sill. He could have snatched that up and chucked it at Noakes's retreating back. Would that work? I'm not good at trajectories and things. Well, very likely it would. I'd have to go and look. Well, then, oh, yes, then he'd only have to finish scrambling in, pick up the paperweight and put it back and go out through the window again. Really? Of course not. It was locked on the inside. No, he'd shut and lock the window, get Noakes's keys from his pocket, open the front door, put back the keys, and... well, then he'd have to go out, leaving the door unlocked. And when Noakes came to, he obligingly locked it behind him. Well, we've got to allow for that possibility, whoever did the murder. That's really brilliant, Harriet. It's very difficult to find a flaw in it. And I'll tell you another thing. Sellen was the only person who could, with comparative safety, leave the door unlocked. In fact, it would be an advantage. You've got ahead of me there. Why? Why? Because he was the village policeman. And look, what happens next? In the middle of the night, he takes it into his head to go on a round of inspection. His attention, as he would put it in his report, is directed to the house by the circumstances of the candles being still alight in the sitting-room. That's why he left them burning, which no other murderer would be likely to do. He tries the door and finds it open. He goes in, sees that everything looks nice and natural, and then hurries out to call up the neighbours with an announcement that some tramp or other has been in and knocked Mr. Noakes on the head. It's a nuisance to be the last man to see the deceased alive, but it's a hell of a good wheeze to be the first to discover the body. It must have been a nasty shock to find that door locked after all. Yes, I suppose that would make him give up his idea, especially if he looked in through the window and saw that Noakes wasn't lying there where he'd left him. The curtains weren't drawn, were they? No, I remember they were open when we arrived. What would he think? He'd think Noakes wasn't killed after all, and would wait for the morning, wondering when and how. Poor man. And then when nothing happened after all, and Noakes didn't turn up, why, it was enough to drive him dotty. If it happened that way. And then we came, and I suppose he was hanging about here all morning, waiting to hear the worst. He was right on the spot when the body was found, wasn't he? I say, Peter, all this is a bit grim. It's only a theory, after all. We haven't proved a word of it. That's the worst of you mystery-mongers. Anything's a solution so long as it holds together. Let's make a theory about somebody else. Whom shall we have? But how about Mrs. Ruddle? She's a tough old lady, and not an altogether sympathetic character. Why on earth should Mrs. Ruddle... Never mind why. Why never gets you anywhere. Mrs. Ruddle came to borrow a drop of paraffin. Noakes was sniffing round and heard her. He invited her to step in and explain herself. He said he had often had doubts of her honesty. She said he owed her a week's money. High words passed. He made for her. She snatched up the poker. He ran away, and she threw the poker at him and caught him on the back of the head. Now, that's why enough when people lose their tempers. Unless you prefer to believe that Noakes made improper advances to Mrs. Ruddle, and she dotted him one accordingly. Idiot. Well, I don't know. Look at old James Fleming and Jessie Macpherson. I wouldn't fancy Mrs. Ruddle myself, but then my standard is high. Very well. Mrs. Ruddle knocks Noakes on the head and... Oh, wait a minute. Now, this is coming rather pretty. She runs over to the cottage in a terrible stew, crying, "Bert, Bert, I've killed Mr. Noakes." Bert says, "Oh, nonsense." And they come back to the house together just in time to see Noakes go tumbling down the cellar steps. Bert goes down, leaving no footprints. He'd taken off his boots for the night and ran over in his slippers. It's all grass over the field to the cottage. Bert says, "He's dead this time, all right." Then Mrs. Ruddle goes to fetch a ladder, while Bert locks the door and puts the key back in the dead man's pocket. He goes upstairs through the trapdoor onto the roof, and Mrs. Ruddle holds the ladder while he gets down. Do you mean that seriously, Peter? I can't mean it seriously till I've had a look at the roof. But there's one thing they remember afterwards. Bert has left the cellar door open, hoping it will look as though Noakes had had an accident. But when we arrive, they're a bit put out. We were not the people who were intended to discover the body. That was to be Miss Twitterton's job. They know she's easily hoodwinked, but they know nothing about us. First of all, Mrs. Ruddle isn't keen to have us here at all, but when we insist on getting the key and coming in, she makes the best of it. Only, she calls out to Bert, "Shut the cellar door, Bert, it's perishing cold," thinking to postpone matters a little, you see, and take stock of us first. And by the way, we've only got Mrs. Ruddle's word for it that Noakes died at that particular time, or that he didn't go to bed or anything. Might all have happened much later at night, or, better still, when she came in the morning, because then he'd be ready dressed, and she'd only have to make the bed again. What? In the morning? All that business on the roof? Suppose anybody came by? Bert on a ladder, cleaning out the gutters? No harm in cleaning out a gutter. Gutter? What does that... Gutter. Guttered. The candles. Don't they prove it happened at night? They don't prove it, they suggest it. We don't know how long the candles were to start with. Noakes may have sat listening to the wireless till they burnt themselves out in the sockets. Thrift, Horatio. It was Mrs. Ruddle who said the wireless wasn't going, who put the time at between 9 and 9:30, just after Helen and Noakes had been quarrelling. It's not awfully like Mrs. Ruddle to have gone away without hearing the end of the row, when you come to think of it. If you look at the thing in a prejudiced way, all her actions seem odd. And she had it in for Selden, and sprang it on him beautifully. Yes, said Harriet thoughtfully. And you know she kept on sort of hinting things to me when we were doing the sandwiches for lunch. And she was very artful about refusing to answer Selden's question before the superintendent came. But honestly, Peter, do you think she and Bert have brains enough between them to work out that business with the keys? And would they have had the sense and self-restraint to keep their hands off the money? Now you're asking something. But one thing I do know. Yesterday afternoon, Bert fetched a long ladder from the outhouse and went up on the roof with Puffet. Oh, Peter, so he did. Another clue gone west. We do at least know there was a ladder, but how are we to tell now what marks were made when? The trapdoor. Peter laughed ruefully. Puffet informed me, when I met them fetching the ladder, that Bert had just been up to the roof that way to see if there was any soot lid anywhere in the chimney for cleaning the flue. He went up by the privy stair and through your bedroom when Miss Twitterton was being questioned down here. Didn't you hear him? You brought Miss Twitterton down, and up he nipped pronto. Harriet lit a fresh cigarette. Now let's hear the case against Crutchley and the vicar. Well, they're a bit more difficult because of the alibi. Unless one of them was in league with Mrs. Ruddle, we've got to explain away the silence of the wireless. Take Crutchley first. If he did it, we can't very well make up a story about his climbing in at the window, because he couldn't have got there till after Noakes was in bed. He deposited the vicar at the parsonage at 10:30 and was back in Pagford before 11. There'll be no time for long parleyings at windows and clever business with keys. I'm assuming, of course, that Crutchley's times at the garage have been confirmed. If he's guilty, of course, they will be, because they're part of the plan. If it was Crutchley, it must have been premeditated, which means that he might somehow have stolen a key or had one cut. Very early in the morning is Crutchley's time, I fancy. Taking out a taxi for a non-existent customer or something of that kind. He leaves the car somewhere, walks up to the house and lets himself in. Yes, it's awkward after that. Noakes would be upstairs, undressed and in bed. I can't see the point of it. If he attacked him, it would be to rob him, and he didn't rob him. Now it's you who are asking why. But suppose Crutchley came to rob the house and was rummaging in a bureau or something, in the kitchen where the will was found, and Noakes heard him and came downstairs. Stop in to put on his collar and tie, and carefully take in all his precious banknotes with him? Of course not. In his night things. He interrupts Crutchley, who goes for him. He runs away. Crutchley hits him, thinks he's dead, gets the wind up, and runs off, locking the door after him from outside. Then Noakes comes to, wonders what he's doing down there, goes back to his room, dresses, feels queer, goes towards the back door, meaning to fetch Mrs. Ruddle, and falls down the stairs. Excellent. But who made the bed? Oh, bother. Yes. We haven't explained about the wireless. No. My idea was that Crutchley had put the wireless out of action, meaning to establish his alibi for the night before the murder. I meant it to be murder, but you put me off with your theory about robbing a bureau. I'm sorry. I'm starting 2 hairs at once. The Crutchley red herring does seem to be rather a mild one. Is the wireless working now, by the way? Oh, we'll find out. Supposing it isn't, does that prove anything? Not unless it looks as though it had been deliberately put out of order. I suppose it works from batteries. Nothing easier than to loosen a terminal in an accidental-looking manner. Old Noakes could easily put a thing like that right for himself. So he could. Shall I run down and see whether it's working now or not? Ask Bunter, he'll know. Harriet called down the stairs to Bunter and returned to say, working perfectly. Bunter tried it yesterday evening after we'd gone. Ah, then that proves nothing one way or the other. Noakes may have tried to turn it on, failed to spot the trouble till the news bulletin was over, put it right, and left it at that. He may have done that in any case. And so the time scheme goes west again. Oh, this is very discouraging, mayn't it? It now leaves the way open for a murderous attack by the vicar, between 10:30 and 11 o'clock. Why should they... Oh, sorry. I keep on asking why. There's an awful strain of inquisitiveness on both sides of the family. You better reconsider those children, Harriet. They'll be intolerable pests from the cradle. So they will. Frightful. All the same, I do think it looks neater to have a comprehensive motive. Murder for the fun of it breaks all the rules of detective fiction. All right. Well, then, Mr. Goodacre shall have a motive. I'll think of one presently. He walks over from the vicarage at about 10:35 and knocks at the door. Noakes lets him in. There's no reason why he shouldn't let in the vicar, who has always appeared mild and friendly. But the vicar, underneath his professional austerity, conceals one of those dreadful repressions so common among clergymen, as depicted by our realistic novelists. So, of course, does Noakes. The vicar, under cover of a purity campaign, accuses Noakes of corrupting the village maiden, whom subconsciously he wants for himself. Of course, said Harriet cheerfully. Oh, it's how silly of me not to think of it. Nothing could be more obvious. They have one of those squalid, senile rows, and the vicar ends up with a brainstorm and imagine he's the hammer of God, like the parson in Chesterton's story. He lays Noakes out with the poker and departs. Noakes recovers his senses, and we go on from there. That accounts beautifully for the money's having been left on the body. Mr. Goodacre wouldn't want that. Exactly. And the reason why the vicar is so pleasant and innocent about it all now is that the brainstorm has passed, and he has forgotten the whole thing. Disassociated personality. I think that's our best effort yet. We only need now to put a name to the village maiden. It needn't even be that. The vicar may have had a morbid fancy for something else, a passion a la Plato for an aspidistra, or a strange, covetous longing for a cactus. He's a great gardener, you know, and these vegetable and mineral loves can be very sinister indeed. Remember the man in the Eden Philpot story who set his heart on an iron pineapple and brained a fellow with it? Oh, believe me or believe me not, the vicar came prowling round for no good, and when old Noakes flung himself on his knees, crying, "Take my life, but spare the honour of my cactus," he upped with the aspidistropot. It's all very well, Peter, but the poor old thing was really killed. My heart, I know it, but until we find out how, one theory's as fanciful as another. We've got to laugh or break our hearts in this damnable world. It makes me sick to think that I didn't go down into the cellar the night we came. We might have made a job of it then, with the place left just as it was, no clues disturbed, no Ruddles and Puffets and Wimseys tramping round and upsetting everything. My God, that was the worst night's work I ever put in. If he had been wanting to make her laugh this time, he succeeded beyond hope or desire. "It's no good," said Harriet when she'd recovered. "Never, never, never shall we do anything like other people. We shall always laugh when we ought to cry, and love when we ought to work, and make ourselves a scandal and a hissing. Now don't do that. Whatever will Bunter say if he sees you with your hair full of ashes? You better finish dressing and face the situation." She wandered back to the window. "Oh, look, there are two men coming up the path, one of them with a camera. Hell! I'll go and entertain them." "Not alone," said Peter chivalrously, and followed her down. Bunter in the doorway was fighting a desperate verbal battle. "It's no good," said Peter. "Murder will in." "Hello, it's you, Sally, is it? Well, well, well. Are you sober?" "Unfortunately," said Mr. Salcombe Hardy, who was a personal friend, "I am." "Have you got anything in the place, old man? You owe us something after the way we were treated on Tuesday." "Whisky for these gentlemen, Bunter, and put some laudanum in it. Now, children, make it snappy, because the inquest is 11, and I can't turn up in a dressing gown. What are you after? Romance in high life, or mysterious death in Honeymoon House?" "Both," said Mr. Hardy with a grin. "I suppose we'd better begin by offering our mingled congratulations and condolences. Do we mention that you are both in a state of collapse, or is the message to the great British public that you are marvellously happy in spite of this untoward occurrence? Oh, be original, Sally. Say we were fighting like cat and dog, and only relieved from irritable boredom by the prospect of a little detective occupation." "Well, that would make a grand story," said Salcombe Hardy, with a regretful shake of the head. "You're conducting an investigation in double harness, I take it?" "Not at all. The police are doing that." "Say when." Thanks very much." "Well, cheerio. The police, of course, officially. But dash it all, you must have some personal angle on this. Come on, Wimsey, look at it from our point of view. It's the story of the century. Famous amateur sleuth weds mystery writer, finds corpse on bridal night. We didn't, that's the snag." "Ah. Why, now?" "Because we had the sweep-in next morning, and all the clues got destroyed in the muddle," said Harriet. "We better tell you, I suppose." She glanced at Peter, who nodded. Better we than Mrs. Ruddle was in both their minds. They told the story as briefly as possible. "Can I say you've got a theory of the crime?" "Yes," said Peter. "Fine," said Salcombe Hardy. "My theory is that you put the corpse there yourself, Sally, to make a good headline." "Ah, I only wish I'd thought of it. Nothing else?" "I tell you," said Peter, "the evidence is destroyed. You can't have a theory without evidence to go on." "The fact is," said Harriet, "he is completely baffled." "As baffled as a bathroom geezer," agreed her husband. "My wife's baffled, too. It's the only point on which we are at one. When we are tired of heaving crockery about, we sit and sneer at one another's bafflement. The police are baffled, too, or else they confidently expect to make an arrest, one or the other. You can take your choice." "Well," said Sally, "it's a devil of a nuisance for you, and I'm a nuisance too, but I can't help myself. Do you mind if we take a photograph? Quaint Tudor farmhouse with genuine rafters, bride dutifully workmanlike in tweed costume, and bridegroom in full Sherlock Holmes rig-out. You ought to have a pipe and an ounce of shag. Or a fiddle and cocaine. Well, be quick, Sally, and get it over. And see here, old man, I suppose you've got to earn your living, but for God's sake use a little tact." Salcombe Hardy, his violent eyes luminous with sincerity, promised that he would. But Harriet felt that the interview had left both her and Peter badly mauled, and that, of the two, Peter had come off the worse. He had picked his words carefully, and his light tone rang brittle as glass. There was going to be more of this, much more. With sudden determination she followed the pressman out of the room and shut the door. "Mr. Hardy, listen, I know one's absolutely helpless. One has to put up with what newspapers choose to say. I've reason to know it. I've had it before. But if you put in anything sickening about Peter and me, you know what I mean, any of the sort of things that make one writhe and wish one was dead, it'll be pretty rotten for us and pretty rotten of you. Peter isn't exactly a rhinoceros, you know." "My dear Miss Vane, I'm sorry, Lady Peter. Oh, by the way, I forgot to ask, do you intend to go on writing now you are married?" "Yes, of course." "Under the same name?" "Naturally. Can I say that?" "Oh, yes, you can say that. You can say anything except all that awful matrimonial tripe about 'said he with a laughing glance at his brand-new wife,' and the rest of the romantic bilge-water. I mean, it's all quite trying enough. Do leave us a little human dignity, if you possibly can. Look here. If you'll be reasonably restrained and try and keep the other reporters reasonable, you've much more chance of getting stories out of us. After all, we're both news, and it's no good offending news, is it? Peter's been very decent. He's given you all the facts he can. Now, don't make his life a burden to him." "Honestly," said Sally, "I'll try not. But editors are editors." "Editors are ghouls and cannibals." "Yes, they are. And I'll really do my best. About this writing story, can you give me anything exclusive on that? Your husband eager you should continue your professional career, that kind of thing? Doesn't think women should be confined to domestic interests? You look forward to getting hints from his experience for use in your detective novels?" "Oh, damn," said Harriet. "Must you have the personal angle on everything?" "Well, I'm certainly going on writing, and he certainly doesn't object. In fact, I think he entirely approves. But don't make him say it with a proud and tender look or anything sick-making, will you?" No. "Are you writing anything now?" "No, I've only just finished a book. But I've got a new one in my head. In fact, it's just come there." "Good," said Salcombe Hardy. "It's about the murder of a journalist, and the title is 'Curiosity Killed the Cat.'" "Ah, fine," said Sally, quite unperturbed. "And," said Harriet, as they passed along the path between the chrysanthemums, "we told you that I knew this place when I was a child, but we didn't mention that a dear old couple lived here who used to ask me in and give me seed cake and strawberries. That's very pretty and human, and they're dead, so it can't hurt them." "Splendid. And all the ugly furniture and aspidistras were put there by Noakes, so don't blame us for them. And he was a grasping sort of man who sold the Tudor chimney-pots to make sundials." Harriet opened the gate, and Sally and the photographer walked meekly through. "And that," continued Harriet triumphantly, "is somebody's ginger cat. He's adopted us. He sits on Peter's shoulder at breakfast. Everybody likes an animal story. You can have the ginger cat." She shut the gate and smiled over it at them. Salcombe Hardy reflected that Peter Wimsey's wife was almost handsome when she was excited. He sympathized with her anxiety about Peter's feelings. He really thought she must be fond of the old writer. He was deeply moved, for the whisky had been generously measured. He determined to do all he could to keep the human story dignified. Halfway down the lane, he remembered that he had somehow omitted to interview the servants. He looked back, but Harriet was still leaning over the gate. Mr. Hector Punchton of the Morning Star was less lucky. He arrived 5 minutes after Salcombe Hardy's departure, and found Lady Peter Wimsey still leaning over the gate. Since he could scarcely force his way past her, he was obliged to take his story then and there as she chose to give it to him. Halfway through, he felt something blow warmly upon his neck, and turned round with a start. "It's only a bull," said Harriet sweetly. Mr. Punchton, who was town-bred, turned pale. The bull was accompanied by 6 cows, all inquisitive. Had he known it, their presence was the best guarantee of the bull's good conduct, but to him they were all equally large beasts with horns. He could not with courtesy drive them away, because Lady Peter was thoughtfully scratching the bull's forehead while contributing some interesting and exclusive details about her own early life at Great Pagford. Manfully, for a reporter must accept all risks in the execution of his duty, he stuck to his post, listening with, he couldn't help it, a divided attention. "You are fond of animals?" he inquired. "Oh, very," said Harriet. "You must tell your readers that. It's a sympathetic trait, isn't it?" "Sure thing," replied Hector Bunsen. "All very well, but the bull was on his side of the gate and she was on the other." A friendly cow, all red and white, licked his ear. He was astonished to find its tongue so rough. "You'll excuse my not opening the gate," said Harriet with an engaging smile. "I love cows, but not in the garden." To his embarrassment, she climbed over and escorted him with a firm hand to his car. The interview was over. He had had very little opportunity of getting a personal angle on the murder. The cows scattered with lowered heads from before his moving wheels. By a remarkable coincidence, no sooner had he gone than the invisible guardian of the cattle rose up from nowhere and began to collect the herd. On seeing Harriet, he grinned and touched his cap. He strolled back to the house, and before she had got there the cows were gathered round the gate again. At the open kitchen window stood Bunter, polishing glasses. "Rather convenient," said Harriet. "All those cows in the lane?" Yes, my lady," agreed Bunter demurely. "They graze upon the grass verge, I understand. A very satisfactory arrangement, if I may say so." Harriet opened her mouth and shut it again, as a thought struck her. She went down the passage and opened the back door. She was not really surprised to see an extraordinarily ugly bull-mastiff tied by a rope to the scraper. Bunter came out of the kitchen and padded softly into the scullery. "Is that our dog, Bunter?" "The owner brought him this morning, my lady, to inquire whether his lordship might desire to purchase an animal of that description. I understand he is an excellent watchdog. I suggested that he should be left here to await his lordship's convenience." Harriet looked at Bunter, who returned her gaze unmoved. "Have you thought of aeroplanes, Bunter? We might put a swan on the roof. I have not been able to hear of a swan, my lady, but there is a person who owns a goat." Mr. Hardy was rather fortunate. "The cattle driver," said Bunter with sudden wrath, "was late. His instructions were perfectly clear. The lost time will be deducted from his remuneration. He must not be paltered with. His lordship is not accustomed to it. Excuse me, my lady, the goat is just arriving, and I fear there may be a little difficulty with the dog on the doorstep." Harriet left him to it. Chapter 14. Crowner's Quest. Love? Do I love? I walk within the brilliance of another's thought, as in a glory. I was dark before, as Venus's chapel in the black of night, but there was something holy in the darkness, softer and not so thick as otherwhere, and as rich moonlight may be to the blind, unconsciously consoling. Then love came, like the outbursting of a trodden star. Thomas Lovell Beddoes, the second brother. The coroner did not, after all, confine himself to taking evidence of identity, but he showed a laudable discretion in handling his witnesses. Miss Twitterton, in a brand-new black frock, a perky little close-fitting hat, and a black coat of old-fashioned cut, clearly resurrected for the occasion, testified with sniffs that the body was that of her uncle William Noakes, and that she had not seen him since the last Sunday week. She explained her uncle's habit of dividing his time between Broxford and Pagham, and about the 2 sets of keys. Her endeavours to explain also about the sale of the house and the astonishing financial situation disclosed were kindly but firmly cut short, and Lord Peter Wimsey, in act more graceful, took her place and gave a brief and rather nonchalant résumé of his surprising wedding night experiences. He handed the coroner various papers concerning the purchase of the house, and sat down amid a murmur of sympathetic comment. Then came an accountant from Broxford, with a statement about the moribund condition of the wireless business as revealed by a preliminary examination of the books. Mervyn Bunter, in well-chosen language, recounted the visit of the sweep and the subsequent discovery of the body. Dr. Craven spoke to the cause and probable time of death, described the injuries, and gave it as his opinion that they could not have been self-inflicted or produced by an accidental fall. Next, Joe Sellen, very white in the face, but in official control of himself. He said he had been summoned to see the dead body, and described how it lay in the cellar. "You are the village constable?" "Yes, sir." "When did you last see the deceased alive?" On the Wednesday night, sir, at 9:05. "Will you tell us about that?" "Yes, sir. I had a certain matter of a private nature to discuss with the deceased. I proceeded to the house and spoke to him at the sitting-room window for about 10 minutes. "Did he then seem just as usual?" "Yes, sir, except that words passed between us and he was a little excited. When we had finished our conversation, he shut and bolted the window. I tried both doors and found them locked. I then went away." "You did not enter the house?" "No, sir." "And you left him at 9:15 p.m., alive and well?" "Yes, sir." "Very well." Joe Sellen turned to go, but the lugubrious man whom Bunter had met in the pub rose up from among the jury and said, "We should like to ask the witness, Mr. Perkins, what he had words with the deceased about." "You hear?" said the coroner, slightly put out. "The jury wish to know the cause of your dispute with the deceased." "Yes, sir. The deceased threatened to report me for a breach of duty." "Ah," said the coroner. "Well, we're not here to examine into your official conduct. It was he that threatened you, not you that threatened him?" "That's right, sir. Though I admit I was annoyed and spoke a bit sharp to him." "I see. You did not return to the house that night?" "No, sir." "Very well, that'll do. Superintendent Kirk?" The little stir of excitement aroused by Sellen's evidence died down before the enormous impassivity of Mr. Kirk, who described very slowly and at considerable length the arrangement of the rooms in the house, the nature of the fastenings on the doors and windows, and the difficulty of ascertaining the facts due to the, quite fortuitous though very unfortunate, disturbance caused by the arrival of the new occupiers. The next witness was Martha Ruddle. She was in a great state of excitement, and almost excessively ready to assist the law. It was indeed her own readiness that undid her. "Oh, that taken aback," said Mrs. Ruddle. "You could have knocked me down with a feather. Driving up to the door in the middle of the night, as you might say, in such a big motor car as I never did see in all my born days, not without it was on the pictures. 'Lord, what?' I says, not believing him. Which I'm sure, sir, it ain't surprising. More like film stars, I says, begging your pardon. And of course I was mistook, but that there car being so big, and the lady in her fur coat, and the gentleman with a glass in his eye, just like Ralph Lynn, which was all I could see in the—" Peter turned the monocle on the witness with so outraged an astonishment that the giggles turned to loud laughter. "Kindly keep to the question," said Mr. Perkins, vexed. "You were surprised to hear that the house was sold. Very well. We have heard how you got in. Now will you please describe the condition of the house as you observed it?" From a tangle of irrelevancies, the coroner disengaged the facts that the bed had not been slept in, that the supper things were on the table, and that the cellar door had been found open. With a weary sigh, for his cold was a severe one, and he wanted to finish and get home, he took the witness back to the events of the preceding Wednesday. "Yes," said Mrs. Ruddle, "I did see Joe Sellen, and a nice sort of policeman he is, using language not fit for a respectable woman to listen to. I don't wonder Mr. Noakes shut the window in his face." "You saw him do that?" "Plain as the nose on your face I see him. Standing there he was, with a candlestick in his hand, and same as I couldn't miss seeing him. And laughing fit to bust, and well he might, hearing Joe Sellen carrying on that ridiculous. Well, I says to myself, a nice policeman you are, Joe Sellen, and I ought to know it. seeing you had to come to me to find out who took them ends of Miss Twitterton's." "We are not inquiring into that," began the coroner, when the lugubrious man again rose up and said, "The jury would like to know whether the witness heard what the quarrel was about." "Yes, I did," said the witness, without waiting for the coroner. "They was quarrelling about his wife. That's what they was quarrelling about. And I says it's a—" "Whose wife?" asked the coroner, while the whole room rustled with expectation. "Joe's wife, of course," said Mrs. Ruddle. "What have you done with my wife, you old villain?" he says, using names what I wouldn't put my tongue to. Joe Sellen sprang to his feet. "That's a lie, sir." "Now, Joe," said Kirk. "We'll hear you in a moment," said Mr. Perkins. "Now, Mrs. Ruddle, you're sure you heard those words?" "The bad words, sir?" "The words. What have you done with my wife?" "Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, I heard that, sir." "Did any threats pass?" "No, sir," admitted Mrs. Ruddle regretfully. "Only saying as Mr. Noakes was bound for the bad place, sir." "Quite so. No suggestions about how he was likely to get there?" "Sir?" "No mention of killing or murder?" "Not as I heard, sir, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did offer to kill Mr. Noakes. Not a bit, I wouldn't." "But actually you heard nothing of the sort?" "Well, I couldn't rightly say I did, sir." "And Mr. Noakes was alive and well when he shut the window?" "Yes, sir." Kirk leaned across the table and spoke to the coroner, who asked, "Did you hear anything further?" "I didn't want to hear nothing further, sir. All I heard was that Joe Sellen a-hammering on the door." "Did you hear Mr. Noakes let him in?" "Let him in?" cried Mrs. Ruddle. "What did Mr. Noakes want to be letting him in for? Mr. Noakes wouldn't let nobody in what used language to him like what Joe used. He was a terrible timid man, was Mr. Noakes." "I see. And the next morning you came to the house and got no answer." "That's right. And I says, 'Lor,' I says, 'Mr. Noakes must have gone over to Broxford.'" Yes, you told us that before. "And although you had heard all this terrible quarrel the night before, it never occurred to you that anything might have happened to Mr. Noakes?" "Well, no, I didn't. I thought he'd gone off to Broxford, same as he often did." "Quite. In fact, until Mr. Noakes was found dead, you thought nothing of this quarrel and attached no importance to it." "Well," said Mrs. Ruddle, "only when I knowed as he must have died before 9:30. "How did you know that?" Mrs. Ruddle, with many circumlocutions, embarked upon the story of the wireless. Peter Wimsey wrote a few lines on a scrap of paper, which he folded and passed to Kirk. The superintendent nodded and passed it on to the coroner, who, at the conclusion of the story, asked, "Wireless was Mr. Noakes's business?" "Oh, yes, sir." "If anything had gone wrong with a set, could he have put it right?" "Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, he was very clever with them things." "But he only cared to listen to the news bulletins?" "That's right, sir." "What time did he usually go to bed?" 11 o'clock, sir. Regular as clockwork he was. Supper at 7:30, news at 9:30, bed at 11, when he was at home, that is." "Quite. How did you come to be near enough at 9:30 to know whether the wireless was on?" Mrs. Ruddle hesitated. "I just stepped over to the shed, sir." "Yes?"
Just to fetch something, sir."
"Yes?"
Only a mite of paraffin, sir," said Mrs. Ruddle, "which I'd put it back faithful in the morning, sir."
"Ah, yes. Yeah, well, that's none of our business. Yeah, well, thank you. Now, Joseph Sellen, you want to make a further statement?"
"Yes, sir. Only this, sir. Them words about Mrs. Sellen wasn't never mentioned at all. All I might have said, 'Now don't you report me, sir, or I'll be in trouble, and what'll become of my wife?' That's all, sir."
"The deceased never interfered with your wife in any way?"
"No, sir. Certainly not, sir."
"I think I'd better ask you whether the last witness bears you any grudge to your knowledge."
Well, sir, about them ends of Miss Twitterton's. In the execution of my duty, I had to interrogate her son Albert, and I think she took it amiss, sir. I see. I think that's, yes, Superintendent?" Mr. Kirk had just received another message from his noble colleague. It appeared to perplex him, but he faithfully put the question. "Well," said Mr. Perkins, "I should have thought you could have asked him yourself. However, the superintendent wishes to know the length of the candle deceased had in his hand when he came to the window." Joe Selland stared. "Oh, I don't know, sir," he said finally. "I never noticed. I don't think it was special one way or the other." The coroner turned interrogatively to Kirk, who, not knowing what was behind the question, shook his head. Mr. Perkins blew his nose irritably, dismissed the witness, and turned to the jury. "Well, gentlemen, I don't see that we can finish this inquiry today. You see that it is impossible to fix the exact moment when the deceased met his death, since he may have been prevented from hearing the news bulletin by a temporary defect in the wireless apparatus, which he may have subsequently repaired. You have heard that the police are in a considerable difficulty as regards the collecting of evidence, since, by a most unfortunate accident for which nobody is at all to blame, various possible clues were destroyed. I understand that the police would like an adjournment. Is that so?" Kirk said that it was so, and the coroner adjourned the inquiry to that day fortnight, thus putting a tame end to a very promising affair. As the audience scrambled from the little court, Kirk caught Peter. "That old catamaran," he said angrily. "Mr. Perkins came down pretty sharp on her. But if he listened to me, he wouldn't have taken any evidence, only to identity." "You think that would have been wise? Let her put her story all round the village, and everybody saying you didn't dare to let it come out at the inquest? He did at least give her the opportunity for an open display of spite. I think he's done better for you than you realize." "Maybe you're right, my lord. I didn't see it that way. What was the point about the candle?" I wondered how much he really did remember. If he's not sure about the candle, he may only have imagined the clock. Ah, that's so," said Kirk slowly. He was not sure about the implication of this, nor, to tell the truth, was Wimsey. He might, Harriet suggested softly in her husband's ear, have lied about the time. So he might. Queer thing is that he didn't. Mrs. Ruddle's clock said the same. Hawkshaw, the detective, and who put back the clock. "Here," said Kirk, exasperated. "Look at that." Peter looked. Mrs. Ruddle on the doorstep was holding a kind of court among the reporters. "Goodness," said Harriet. "Peter, can't you take them away? Who was the chap who leapt into the gulf?" "Rome prizes most her citizens, but every Englishman loves a lord. That's the idea? My wife," said Peter mournfully, "would cheerfully throw me to the lions, if required. Moriturus. Very well, we'll try." He advanced resolutely on the group. Mr. Puncheon, seeing this noble prey at his mercy, unprotected by fat bulls of Busman, flung himself upon him with a gleeful cry. The other hounds closed in about them. "I say," said a grumbling voice close by, "I ought to have given evidence. The law ought to have known about them 40 quid. Trying to wash it up, that's what they are." "I don't suppose it seems so important to them, Frank." "Well, it's important to me. Besides, didn't he tell me as he was going to pay me on Wednesday? I reckon the coroner ought to have been told about it." Salcombe Hardy, having had his chance with Peter, had not abandoned his hold on Mrs. Ruddle. Mischievously, Harriet determined to pry him loose. "Mr. Hardy, look, if you want an inside story, you'd better get hold of the gardener, Frank Crutchley. There he is, over there, talking to Miss Twitterton. He wasn't called at the inquest, so the others may not realize he's got anything to tell them." Sally bubbled over with gratitude. "If you make it worth his while," said Harriet, with serpent malice, "he might keep it exclusive." Thank you very much," said Sally, "for the tip." "That's part of our bargain," said Harriet, beaming upon him. Mr. Hardy was rapidly coming to the conclusion that Peter had married a most fascinating woman. He made a rapid dart at Crutchley, and in a few moments was seen to depart with him in the direction of the 4 Ale Bar. Mrs. Ruddle, suddenly deserted,
gazed indignantly about her. "Oh, there you are, Mrs. Ruddle. Where's Bunter? We'd better let him drive us home and come back for his lordship, or we shall get no lunch. I'm simply starving. What an impertinent, tiresome lot these newspaper men are." "That's right, my lady," said Mrs. Ruddle. "I wouldn't talk to the likes of them." She tossed her head, setting some curious jet ornaments on her bonnet jingling, and followed her mistress to the car. Sitting up in all that grandeur, she would feel just like a film star herself. Reporters, indeed. As they drove away, 6 cameras clicked. "There now," said Harriet. "You'll be in all the papers." "Well, to be sure," said Mrs. Ruddle. "Peter? Madam? Funny, after what we said. That suggestion cropping up about Mrs. Selland. Village matron instead of village maiden. Yes, very odd. Can't be anything in it. You'll never know." "You didn't think so when you said it. I'm always trying to say something too silly to be believed, but I never manage it. Have another cutlet." "Thanks, I will." "Bunter cooks like an angel in the house. I thought Selland got through his examination surprisingly well. Nothing like telling the exact official truth and no more. Kirk must have coached him pretty thoroughly. I wonder if Kirk— No, dash it, I won't wonder. I will not be bothered with all these people. We seem curiously unable to get any time to ourselves this honeymoon. And that reminds me, the vicar wants us to go round to his place this evening for a sherry party." "A sherry party? Good heavens. We provide the party, he provides the sherry. His wife will be so delighted to see us, and we will excuse her not calling first, as she has a women's institute this afternoon." "Must we?" "I think we must. Our example has encouraged him to start a sherry fashion in these parts, and he's sent for a bottle on purpose." Harriet gazed at him in dismay. "Where from?" "From the best hotel in Pagford. I accepted with pleasure for both of us. Was that wrong?" "Peter, you are not normal. You have a social conscience far in advance of your sex. Public-house sherry at the vicarage. Ordinary, decent men shuffle and lie till their wives drag them out by the ears. There must be something you'll jib at. Will you refuse to put on a boiled shirt?" "Do you think a boiled shirt would please them?" "I suppose it would. Besides, you've got a new frock you want to show me." "You're definitely too good to live. Of course we'll go and drink their sherry, if we die of it. Couldn't we just be selfish and naughty this afternoon?" "As how?" "Go off somewhere by ourselves." "By God, we will." "Is that really your notion of happiness?" "To that depth have I fallen, I admit it. Don't dance on a woman when she's down. Have some of this. I don't know what it is, this thing Bunter's made. It looks absolutely marvellous." "Just how naughty and selfish may I be? May I drive fast? I mean, really fast?" Harriet repressed a shudder. She liked to drive, and even liked being driven, but anything over 70 miles an hour made her feel hollow inside. Still, married people cannot have everything their own way. "Yes, really fast. If you feel like that. Definitely too good to live. I should say definitely too good to die. But really fast means the main road." "Oh, so it does. Well, we'll do the main road really fast and get rid of it." The ordeal lasted only as far as Great Pagford. Happily they encountered none of Superintendent Kirk's black sheep parked on bends, though just outside they shot past Frank Crutchley driving a taxi, and were rewarded by his astonished and admiring stare. Passing the police station at a demure legal 30, they turned out westward and took the side roads. Harriet, who could not distinctly recollect having breathed at all since they left Pagleham, filled her lungs and observed in resolutely steady tones that it was a lovely day for a run. "Isn't it? Do you approve of this road?" "It's beautiful," said Harriet fervently. "All corners." "Ha ha!" he laughed. "Prière de ne pas brutaliser la machine." "I ought to know better. God knows I'm frightened enough of things myself. I must have a streak of my father in me. He was one of the old school. You either faced a fence of your own accord or were walloped over it and no nonsense. It worked, after a fashion.
One learned to pretend one wasn't a coward and take out the change in bad dreams. You certainly don't show any signs of it. One of these days you'll find me out, I expect. I don't happen to be afraid of speed. That's why I like to show off. But I give you my word, I won't do it again this trip." He let the needle drop back to 25, and they dawdled on through the lanes in silence, with no particular direction. About the mid-afternoon they found themselves in a village some 30 miles from home. An old village with a new church and a pond flanking a trim central green, all clustered at the base of a little rise. On the side opposite the church, a narrow and rather ill-made lane appeared to rise towards the brow of the hill. "Let's go up there," said Harriet, appealed to for instructions. "It looks as though we should get a good view." The car swung into the lane and wound its way up with lazy ease between low hedges already touched with autumn. Below and to their left was spread the pleasant English country, green and russet, with well-wooded fields sloping to a stream that twinkled placidly in the October sunshine. Here and there the pale glint of stubble showed amid the pasture, or the blue smoke drifted above the trees from the red chimneys of a farm. On the right, at a bend of the road, they came upon a ruined church, only the porch and a portion of the chancel arch left standing. The other stonework had doubtless been carried away to build the new church in the centre of the village, but the abandoned graves with their ancient headstones had been trimly kept, and just within the open gate a space had been levelled and made into a kind of garden plot, with flower beds and a sundial and a wooden seat, on which visitors could rest to view the distant prospect. Peter gave an explanation, and let the car slide to a standstill on the grass verge. "May I lose my last $1," he said, "if that ain't one of our chimney pots." "I believe you're right," said Harriet, staring at the sundial, whose column did indeed bear a remarkable resemblance to a Tudor pot. She followed Peter out of the car and through the gate. Seen close to, the sundial revealed itself as a miscellany. The dial and gnomon were ancient. The base was a millstone. The column, when sharply tapped, sounded hollow. "I will have my pot back," said Peter in determined tones, "if I die for it. We will present the village with a handsome stone pillar in its place. Jack shall have his Jill, naught shall go ill. The man shall have his mare again, and all go well." This suggests a new variation of the time-honoured sport of pot-hunting. We will track down our bartered chimneys from end to end of the county, as the Roman legions sought the lost eagles of Varus. I think the luck went out of the house with the chimneys, and it's our job to bring it back. That'll be fun. I counted this morning. There are only 4 of them missing. This looks exactly like the 3 that are left. I'm positive it's ours. Something tells me so. Let us register our claim to it by a trifling act of vandalism which the first rain will blot out." He solemnly took out a pencil and inscribed upon the pot, "Tallboys, suam quisque homo rem meminit, Peter Wimsey." He handed the pencil to his wife, who added, "Harriet Vane," with the date below. "First time of writing it?" "Yes. It looks a little drunk, but that's because I had to squat down to it. No matter. It's an occasion. Let's occupy this handsome seat and contemplate the landscape. The car's well off the road, if anybody wants to get up the lane." The seat was solid and comfortable. Harriet pulled off her hat and sat down, pleased to feel the soft wind stir her hair. Her gaze wandered idly over the sunlit valley. Peter hung his hat on the extended hand of a stout 18th-century cherub, engaged in perusing a lichenous book on an adjacent tombstone, sat down on the other end of the seat, and stared reflectively at his companion. His spirits were in a state of confusion, into which the discovery of the murder and the problem of Joe Sellen and the clock had introduced only a subsidiary set of disturbing factors. These he dismissed from his mind, and set himself to reduce the chaos of his personal emotions to some sort of order. He'd got what he wanted. For nearly 6 years he directed his resolutions stubbornly to a single end. Up to the very moment of the achievement he had not paused to consider what might be the result of his victory. The last 2 days had given him little time for thought.
He only knew that he was faced with an entirely strange situation, which was doing something quite extraordinary to his feelings. He forced himself to examine his wife with detachment. Her face had character, but no one would ever think of calling it beautiful. He had always, carelessly and condescendingly, demanded beauty as a prerequisite. She was long-limbed and sturdily made, with a kind of loosely knit freedom of movement that might, with a more controlled assurance, grow into grace. Yet he could have named, and if he had chosen might have had, a score of women far lovelier in form and motion. Her speaking voice was deep and attractive, yet after all he had once owned the finest lyric soprano in Europe. Otherwise, what? A skin like pale honey, and a mind of a curious tough quality that stimulated his own. Yet no woman had ever so stirred his blood. She'd only to look or speak to make the very bones shake in his body. He knew now that she could render back passion for passion with an eagerness beyond all expectation, and also with a kind of astonished gratitude that told him more than she knew. While a mannered reticence forbade that the name of her dead lover should ever be mentioned between them, Peter, interpreting phenomena in the light of expert knowledge, found himself mentally applying to that unhappy young man quite a number of epithets, among which clumsy lout and egotistical puppy were the kindest. But the passionate exchange of felicity was no new experience. What was new was the enormous importance of the whole relationship. It was not merely that the present bond could not be sundered without scandal and expense and the troublesome interference of lawyers. It was that, for the first time in his experience, it really mattered to him what his relations with a lover were. He had somehow vaguely imagined the end of desire attained, soul and sense would lie down together like the lion and the lamb. But they did nothing of the sort. With orb and sceptre thrust into his hands, he was afraid to take hold on power and call his empire his own. He remembered having said to his uncle, with a solemn dogmatism better befitting a much younger man, "Surely it is possible to love with the head as well as the heart." Mr. Delagardi had replied, somewhat dryly, "No doubt, so long as you do not end by thinking with your entrails instead of your brain." This, he felt, was precisely what was happening to him. As soon as he tried to think, a soft, inexorable clutch seemed to fasten itself upon his bowels. He'd become vulnerable in the very point where always, until now, he'd been most triumphantly sure of himself. His wife's serene face told him that she had somehow gained all the confidence he had lost. Before their marriage, he'd never seen her look like that. "Harriet," he said suddenly, "what do you think about life? I mean, do you find it good on the whole? Worth living?" He could at any rate trust her not to protest archly, "That's a nice thing to ask on one's honeymoon." She turned to him with a quick readiness, as though here was the opportunity to say something she had been wanting to say for a long time. "Yes, I've always felt absolutely certain it was good, if only I could get it straightened out. I've hated almost everything that ever happened to me, but I knew all the time it was just things that were wrong, not everything. Even when I felt most awful, I never thought of killing myself or wanting to die, only of somehow getting out of the mess and starting again. That's rather admirable. With me, it's always been the other way round. I can enjoy practically everything that comes along while it's happening, only I have to keep on doing things, because if I once stop, it all seems a lot of rot, and I don't care a damn if I go west tomorrow. At least that's what I should have said. Now I don't know. I'm beginning to think that there may be something in it after all. Harriet, it sounds like Jack Spratt and his wife. If there was any possible chance of straightening it out for you... We've begun well, haven't we, with this awful bloody mess? And once we get clear of it, I'd give anything. But There you are, you see, it's the same thing over again. But that's what I'm trying to tell you. It ought to be, but it isn't. Things have come straight. I always knew they would if one hung on long enough, waiting for a miracle. Honestly, Harriet? Well, it seems like a miracle to be able to look forward to see all the minutes in front of one come hopping along with something marvellous in them, instead of just saying, well, that one didn't actually hurt, and the next may be quite bearable, if only something beastly doesn't come pouncing out. As bad as that? No, not really, because one got used to it, to being everlastingly tightened up to face things, you see. But when one doesn't have to anymore, it's different. I can't tell you what a difference it makes. Oh, damn and blast you, Peter, you know you're making me feel exactly like heaven, so what's the sense of trying to spare your feelings? I don't know it, and I can't believe it. But come here, and I'll try. That's better. His chin was pressed upon her head when the sword came back from the sea. No, you are not too heavy. You needn't insult me. Listen, dear, if that's true, or even half true, I shall begin to be afraid of death. At my age, it's rather disturbing. All right, you needn't apologize. I like new sensations. Women had found paradise in his arms before now, and told him so with considerable emphasis and eloquence. He had accepted the assurance cheerfully, because he had not really cared whether they found paradise or only the Champs-Élysées, so long as the place was a pleasant one. He was as much troubled and confused now as though somebody had credited him with the possession of a soul. In strict logic, of course, he would have had to admit that he had as much right to a soul as anybody else, but the mocking analogy of the camel and the needle's eye was enough to make that claim stick in his throat as a silly piece of presumption. Of such was not the kingdom of heaven. He had the kingdoms of earth, and they should be enough for him. Though nowadays it was in better taste to pretend neither to desire nor deserve them. But he was filled with a curious misgiving, as though he had meddled in matters too high for him, as though he were being forced, body and bones, through some enormous wringer that was squeezing out of him something undifferentiated till now, and even now excessively nebulous and inapprehensible. Vagula blandula, he thought, pleasantly erratic, and surely of no consequence. He couldn't possibly turn it to something that had to be reckoned with. He made the mental gesture of waving away an intrusive moth, and tightened his bodily hold on his wife as though to remind himself of the palpable presence of the flesh. She responded with a small, contented sound like a snort, an absurd sound that seemed to lift the ceiling stone and release some wellspring of laughter deep down within him. It came bubbling and leaping up in the most tremendous hurry to reach the sunlight, so that all his blood danced with it, and his lungs were stifled with the rush and surge of this extraordinary fountain of delight. He felt himself at once ridiculous and omnipotent. He was exultant. He wanted to shout. Actually, he neither moved nor spoke. He sat still, letting the mysterious rapture have its way with him. Whatever it was something that had been suddenly liberated and was intoxicated by its new freedom. It was behaving very foolishly, and its folly enchanted him. "Peter?" "What is it, lady?" "Have I got any money?" The preposterous irrelevance of the question made the fountain shoot sky-high. "My darling fool, yes, of course you have. We spent a whole morning signing papers." "Yes, I know. But where is it? I mean, can I draw a cheque on it? I was thinking, I'd never paid my secretary her salary at the moment. I haven't got a penny in the world except what's yours. It isn't mine, it is your own. Settled on you. Murbles explained all that, though I don't suppose you were listening. But I know what you mean, and yes, it's there, and yes, you can draw a cheque on it straight away. Why this sudden state of destitution? Because Mr. Rochester. I wasn't going to be married in grey alpaca, and I spent every blessed thing I had to do you proud, and then some. I left poor Miss Bracey lamenting, and borrowed 10 bob off her at the last minute for enough petrol to get me to Oxford. That's right, laugh. I did kill my pride. But, oh, Peter, it had a lovely death. Full sacrificial rites, Harriet. I really believe you love me. You couldn't do anything so unutterably and divinely right by accident. Quelle folie, mais quel geste. I thought it would amuse you. That's why I told you instead of borrowing a stamp from Bunter and writing a formal inquiry to the bank. Meaning that you don't grudge me my victory? Generous woman. While you're about it, tell me something else. How the blazes, with all the other things, did you manage to afford the Dunn autograph? That was a special effort. 3 5,000-word shorts at 40 guineas each for the Thrill magazine. What? The story about the young man who murdered his aunt with a boomerang? Yes. And the unpleasant stockbroker who was found in the curate's front parlour with his head bashed in, like old Noakes. Oh, dear. I was forgetting all about poor Mr. Noakes. Damn old Noakes. At least perhaps I'd better not say that. It might be true. I remember the curate. What was the third? The cook who put prussic acid in the almond icing? Yes. Where did you get hold of that exceedingly low-class rag? Does Bunter pore over it in his leisure moments? No. He reads photographic journals. But there are such things as press cutting agencies. Are there, indeed? How long have you been collecting cuttings? Nearly 6 years, isn't it, by now? They leave a shamefaced existence in a locker drawer, and Bunter pretends to know nothing about them. When some impertinent beast of a bone-headed reviewer has turned me dyspeptic with fury, he politely attributes my ill temper to the inclement season. Your turn to laugh. I had to be maudlin over something, curse it, and you didn't overwhelm me with material. I once lived 3 weeks on a belated notice in Punch. Brute, fiend, devil woman, you might say you're sorry. I can't be sorry for anything. I've forgotten how. He was silent. The fountain had become a stream that ran chuckling and glittering through his consciousness, spreading as it went into a wide river that swept him up and drowned him in itself. To speak of it was impossible. He could only have taken refuge in inanities. His wife looked at him, thoughtfully drew her feet up onto the seat so as to take her weight from his knees, and settled herself into acquiescence with his mood. Whether left to themselves, they would have succeeded in emerging from this speechless trance, and might not, in the manner of Dunn's ecstatic couple, have remained like sepulchral statues in the same posture, and saying nothing until nightfall, is uncertain. 3/4 of an hour later, an elderly, bearded person came creaking up the lane with a horse and wagon. He looked at them with ruminative eyes, showing no particular curiosity. But the spell was broken. Harriet swung herself hurriedly off her husband's knees and stood up. Peter, who in London would rather have been seen dead than embracing anybody in public, astonishingly showed no embarrassment, but cried out a cordial greeting to the carter. "Is my bus in your way?" Or, "No, sir, no thank'ee. Don't disturb yourself. Lovely day it's been." He strolled down to the gate, and the man checked his horse. "That it has. Real lovely day." "Pleasant little spot, this. Who put up the seat?" That's Squire done that, sir. Mr. Trevor over at the big house. He done it along with the women as likes to come up Sunday afternoons with their flowers and such. The new church ain't only been built 5 year, and there's a sight of folks like to tend the graves in the old churchyard. It's closed for buryings now, of course, but Squire says why not make it pleasant and comfortable like. Mrs. Stiffish pull up the line, and we're full to the children and the old people, so that's what he done. Well, we are very much beholden to him. Was the
sundial here before that." The carter chuckled. "Lord love you, no, sir, no. She's a regular job, is that there sundial. Vicar, he found the top of her put away in the rubbish hole when they were clearing away the old church. And Bill Muggins, he says, 'There's the stone out of the old mill 'ud make a beautiful base for her, if so be we had a bit of drain pipe or something to put between 'em.' And Jim Hawtrey, he says, 'I know a man,' he says, 'over at Pagleham, what has half a dozen of them ancient chimbley pots for sale.' What's the matter with that? So they tells the vicar, and he tells Squire, and they gets the bits together, and Joe Dudden and Harry Gates, they puts 'em up with a lick of water in their spare time, vicar putting the top on with a watch in his hand, and a little book so she'll tell the time correctly. You'll find her middling right now, sir, if you look. Of course, in the summer she's an hour out, keeping to God's time, and us having to go by government time. That's a curious thing you asking about that there sundial, because why? The very man what sold vicar the chimney pot, he was found dead in his house only yesterday, and they do say it were murder." "You don't say so?" "That's a queer world, ain't it? What's the name of the village? Lopsley?" "Ah, thanks very much. Get yourself a drink. By the way, you know you've got a loose shoe on your near hind." The carter said he had not noticed it, and thanked the observant gentleman for his information. The horse lolloped on. "Time we were getting back," said Peter, with a reluctant note in his voice, "if we're to change in time for the vicar's sherry. We'll call on the squire, though, before we're many days older. I'm determined to have that pot." Chapter 15. Sherry and Bitters. "Fool, hypocrite, villain, man, thou canst not call me that." George Lilo, Tragedy of George Barnwell. Harriet was glad they'd taken the trouble to dress. The vicar's wife, whom she vaguely remembered to have seen in the old days at bazaars and flower shows, perpetually stout, amiable, and a little red in the face, had done honour to the occasion with a black lace dress and a daring little bridge coat in flowered chiffon velvet. She advanced with a beaming face to meet them. "Oh, you poor things, what an upset for you! It is so nice of you to come and see us. I hope Simon apologised for my not calling, but what with the house and the parish work and the Women's Institute, I was quite busy all day. Do come and sit down by the fire. You, of course, are an old friend, my dear, though I don't suppose you remember me. Now let my husband help you off with your coat. Oh, what a pretty frock! Such a lovely colour. I hope you don't mind saying so. I do love to see bright colours and bright faces about me. Come and sit on the sofa against this green cushion. You'll make quite a picture. No, Lord Peter, don't sit on that. It's a rocking chair. It always takes people by surprise. Most men like this one. It's nice and deep. Now, Simon, where did you put those cigarettes? Here they are. I hope they're the kind you like. I'm a pipe smoker myself, and not very knowledgeable, I fear. Oh, thank you. No, not a pipe just before dinner. I will try a cigarette just for a change. Now, my dear, will you join us in this little dissipation? Well, I don't usually, said Mrs. Goodacre, because of the parish, you know. It's very absurd, but one has to set an example. These particular parishioners, said Peter, striking a match persuasively, are corrupted already beyond hope of repentance. Oh, very well, then I will, said the vicar's lady. Bravo, said Mr. Goodacre. That really makes it quite a gay party. Now, it is my prerogative to distribute the sherry. I believe I'm right in saying that sherry is the only wine with which the goddess Nicotina does not quarrel. Quite right, Padre. Ah, you confirm that opinion. I am very glad indeed to hear you say so. And here, yes, will you have some of these little biscuits? Dear me, what a remarkable variety. Quite an embarras de richesse. They come assorted in boxes, said Mrs. Goodacre simply. Cocktail biscuits, they call them. We had them at the last whist drive. Of course. Now, which is the kind that has the cheese inside it? These, I think, said Harriet, from a plenitude of experience, and
Those long ones. Oh, so they are. Well, how clever of you to know. I shall look to you to guide me through this delicate maze. I must say I think a little social gathering like this before dinner is a most excellent idea." "You are sure you wouldn't like to stay and dine with us?" said Mrs. Goodacre anxiously. "You ought to spend the night. Our spare room is always ready. Are you really comfortable, Talboys, after all this terrible business? I told my husband to tell you that if there was anything at all we could do—" "He faithfully delivered your kind message," said Harriet. "It's ever so good of you, but really and truly we're quite all right." "Well," said the vicar's wife, "I expect you would rather be alone, so I won't be an officious old busybody. In our position one's always interfering with people for their good, you know. I'm sure it's a bad habit. By the way, Simon, poor little Mrs. Sellen's very much upset. She was taken quite ill this morning, and we had to send for the district nurse." Oh, dear," said the vicar. "Poor woman. That was a very extraordinary suggestion Martha Ruddle made at the inquest. There can't surely be anything in it." "Oh, certainly not. Nonsense. Martha likes to make herself important. She's a spiteful old thing. Though I can't help saying, even now he's dead, that William Noakes was a nasty old creature." "Not in that way, surely, my dear." "Oh, you never know. But I meant I couldn't blame Martha Ruddle for disliking him. It's all very well for you, Simon. You always think charitably of everyone. And besides, you never talk to him about anything except gardening. Though, as a matter of fact, Frank Crutchley did all the work." "Frank is a very clever gardener indeed," said the vicar. "In fact, he is clever all round. He found the defect in my motor-car engine immediately. I'm sure he will go far." "He's going a little too far with that girl Polly, if you ask me," retorted his wife. "It's about time they asked you to put up the banns. Her mother came up to see me the other day. 'Well, Mrs. Mason,' I said, 'you know what girls are, and I admit it's very difficult to control them these days. If I were you, I should speak to Frank and ask him what his intentions are. However, we mustn't begin talking about parish matters.'" "I should be sorry," said the vicar, "to think ill of Frank Crutchley, or of poor William Noakes either. I expect there's nothing in it but talk. Ah, dear me, to think that when I called at the house last Thursday morning he was lying there dead. I particularly wanted to see him, I remember. I had a small offering of a Teesdalia nudicollis for his rock garden. He was fond of rock plants. I felt very melancholy when I planted it here myself this morning." "You're even fonder of plants than he was," said Harriet, glancing round the shabby room, which was filled with pot plants on stands and tables. "I'm afraid I must admit the soft impeachment. Gardening is an indulgence of mine. My wife tells me it runs away with too much money, and I dare say she's right." "I said he ought to get himself a new cassock," said Mrs. Goodacre, laughing. "But if he prefers rock plants, that's his business." "I wonder," said the vicar wistfully, "what will become of William Noakes's plants? I suppose they'll belong to Aggie Twitterton." "I don't know," said Peter. "The whole thing may have to be sold, I suppose, for the benefit of the creditors." "Oh, dear me," exclaimed the vicar. "Oh, I do hope they will be properly looked after, especially the cacti. They are delicate creatures, and it is getting rather late in the year. I remember peeping in at the window last Thursday and thinking it was hardly safe for them to be left in that room without a fire. It's time they were put under glass for the winter, particularly the big one in the hanging pot and that new variety he's got in the window. Of course, you will be keeping up good fires." "We shall indeed," said Harriet, "now that we've got the chimneys clear, with your assistance. I hope your shoulder isn't too painful." "Oh, well, I can feel it, I can feel it a little, but nothing to speak of. Just a slight bruise, that is all. If there is to be a sale, I shall hope to make an offer for the cacti, if Aggie Twitterton doesn't want to buy them in for herself, and with your permission, my dear, of course. Frankly, Simon, I think them detestably hideous things, but I'm quite ready to offer a home to them. I know you've been coveting those cacti for years." "Not coveting, I hope," said the vicar, "but I fear I must confess to a great weakness for cacti." "It's a morbid passion," said his wife. "Oh, really, my dear, really, you shouldn't use such exaggerated language. Come, Lady Peter, another glass of sherry. Oh, indeed, you must not refuse."
"Shall I put them peas on, Mr. Bunter?"
Bunter paused in his occupation for tidying the sitting-room and strode with some haste to the door. I will see to the peas, Mrs. Ruddle, at the proper time." He looked up at the clock, which marked 5 minutes past 6. "His lordship is very particular about peas." "Is he now?" Mrs. Ruddle seemed to take this as a signal for conversation, for she appeared on the threshold. "That's just like my Bert. Ma, he allus says, I eats peas hard. Funny how often they is hard, or boil right away out of their shells, one or t'other." Bunter offered no comment, and she tried again. "Here's them things you asked me to polish. Come up lovely, ain't they?" She offered for inspection a brass toasting fork and the fragment of a roasting jack that had so unexpectedly made its appearance from the chimney. "Thank you," said Bunter. He hung the toasting fork on a nail by the fireplace, and after a little consideration set the other specimen upright on the whatnot. "Funny," pursued Mrs. Ruddle, "the way the gentry is about them old bits of things. Curios. Rubbish, if you ask me." "This is a very old piece," replied Bunter, gravely stepping back to admire the effect. Mrs. Ruddle sniffed. "Reckon them as shoved it up the chimbley knew what they was a-doing. Give me a nice gas oven any day." "Ah, I'd like that. Same as my sister what lives in Biggleswade." "People have been found dead in gas ovens before now," said Bunter grimly. He took up his master's blazer, shook it, appeared to estimate its contents by their weight, and removed a pipe, a tobacco pouch, and 3 boxes of matches from one pocket. "Lor, now, Mr. Bunter, don't you talk like that. Ain't we had enough corpuses about the house already? How they can go on living here, I don't know. Speaking for his lordship and myself, we are accustomed to corpses." He extracted several more matchboxes, and at the bottom of the nest discovered a sparking plug and a corkscrew. "Ah," said Mrs. Ruddle with a deep sentimental sigh, "and where he's happy, she's happy. Ah, it's easy to see she worships the ground he treads on." Bunter drew out 2 handkerchiefs, male and female, from another pocket, and compared them indulgently. "That is a very proper sentiment in a young married woman." "Happy days. But it's early days yet, Mr. Bunter. A man's a man when all's said and done. Ruddle now, he used to knock me about something shocking when he'd had a drop, though a good husband and bringing the money home reg'lar. "I beg," said Bunter, distributing matchboxes about the room, "you will not institute these comparisons, Mrs. Ruddle. I have served his lordship 20 years, and a sweet-tempered gentleman you could not wish to find." "You ain't married to him, Mr. Bunter. You can give him a month's warning any day." "I hope I know when I am well suited, Mrs. Ruddle. 20 years' service, and never a harsh word nor an unjust action in all my knowledge of him." A tinge of emotion crept into his tone. He laid a powder compact aside on the whatnot, then folded the blazer together with loving care and hung it over his arm. "Ah, you're lucky," said Mrs. Ruddle. "I couldn't rightly say the same of poor Mr. Noakes, which, though he's dead and gone, I will say he was a sour-tempered, close-fisted, suspicious brute. Poor old gentleman." "Gentleman, Mrs. Ruddle, is what I should designate as an elastic term. His lordship—" "There now," interrupted Mrs. Ruddle, "if there ain't love's young dream a-coming up the path." Bunter's brows beetled awfully. "To whom might you be referring, Mrs. Ruddle?" he demanded in a voice like Jupiter Tonan's. "Why, that Frank Crutchley, to be sure." "Oh," Jupiter was appeased. "Crutchley. Is he your choice for a second?" "Ah, go along with you, Mr. Bunter. Me no fear. No, Aggie Twitterton runs after him like an old cat with one kitten." "Indeed?" "At her age. Mutton dressed as lamb. Makes me fair sick. If she knowed what I knows. But there." This interesting revelation was cut short by the entrance of Crutchley himself. "Evening," said he generally to the company. "Any special orders tonight? I ran over thinking there might be. Mr. Hancock don't want me for an hour or 2. His lordship gave instructions that the car was to be cleaned, but now it's out again." "Ah," said Crutchley, apparently taking this as an intimation that gossip might proceed unchecked. "Well, they got a nice day for it." He made a tentative motion to seat himself, but caught Bunter's eye and compromised by leaning negligently against the end of the settle. "Have you heard when they've fixed for the funeral?" inquired Mrs. Ruddle. 11:30 tomorrow. And high time, too, with him lying there a week or more.
There won't be many wet eyes neither, if you ask me. There's one or two couldn't abide Mr. Noakes, not counting him what did away with him. I didn't get much farther at the inquest, seems to me, observed Crutchley. Bunter opened the whatnot and began to select wine-glasses from among its miscellaneous contents. "Ashing it up," said Mrs. Ruddle. "That's what they was. Trying to make out there wasn't nothing atween Joe Selland and him. That Kirk, his face was a treat when Ted Pollock got asking all them questions. Seemed to me they went a bit quick over all that part of it. Didn't want anybody to think as a bobby might have been mixed up in it. See how the Crowner shut me up when I started to tell him? Ah, but them newspaper men was onto it sharp enough." "Did you communicate your opinion to them, may I ask?" "I might have done, or I might not, Mr. Bunter. Only just at that instant minute, out comes my lord, and they was all onto him like whopses round a jam-pot. Him and his lady'll be in all the papers tomorrow. They took a photo of me, too, with her ladyship. Nice to see your friends in the papers, ain't it now?" "The laceration of his lordship's most intimate feelings can afford no satisfaction to me," said Bunter reprovingly. "Ah, if I telled them all I thinks about Joe Selland, they'd have me on the front page. I wonder they lets that young feller go about at large. We might all be murdered in our beds. The moment I sees poor Mr. Noakes' body, I says to myself, now what's Joe Selland doing in this here? Him being the last to see the poor man alive." "Then you were already aware that the crime had been committed on the Wednesday night?" "Well, of course. No, I didn't, not then. See here, Mr. Bunter, don't you go a putting words in a woman's mouth. I think," said Bunter, "you had better be careful." "That's right, Ma," agreed Crutchley. "You go on imagining things, you'll land yourself in Queer Street one of these days." "Well," retorted Mrs. Ruddle, backing out of the door, "I didn't bear no particular grudge against Mr. Noakes. Not like some as I could name, with their £40s. Crutchley stared at her retreating form. God almighty, what a tongue! I wonder her own spit don't poison her. I wouldn't hang a dog on her evidence, mangy old poll parrot." Bunter voiced no opinion, but picked up Peter's blazer and a few other scattered garments and walked upstairs. Crutchley, relieved of his vigilant eye and stern regard for the social proprieties, strolled quietly over to the hearth. "Oh," said Mrs. Ruddle. She brought in a lighted lamp, set it on a table on the far side of the room, and turned on Crutchley with a witch-like smile. "Waiting for kisses in the gloaming?" "What you getting at?" demanded Crutchley morosely. "Aggie Twitterton's a-coming down the hill on her bicycle." "Good." The young man shot a quick look through the window. "Oh, it's her, all right." He rubbed the back of his head and swore softly. "What it is to be the answer to a maiden's prayer," said Mrs. Ruddle. "Now, see here, Ma. Polly's my girl, you know that. There ain't never been nothing atween me and Aggie Twitterton." "Not between you and her, but there might be atween her and you," replied Mrs. Ruddle epigrammatically, and went out before he could reply. Bunter, coming downstairs, found Crutchley thoughtfully picking up the poker. "May I ask why you are a-loitering about here? Your work is outside. If you want to wait for his lordship, you can do so in the garage." "See here, Mr. Bunter," said Crutchley earnestly, "let me bide in here for a bit. Aggie Twitterton's on the prowl, and if she was to catch sight of me, you get me, she's a bit, He touched his forehead significantly. Said Bunter. He went across to the window and saw Miss Twitterton descend from her bicycle at the gate. She straightened her hat and began to fumble in the basket attached to the handlebars. Bunter drew the curtains rather sharply. "Well, you can't stop here long. His lordship and her ladyship will be back any minute now." "What is it now, Mrs. Ruddle?" "I'll put out the plates like you said, Mr. Bunter," announced that lady with meek self-righteousness. Bunter frowned. She'd something rolled in the corner of her apron and was rubbing it as she spoke. He felt that it would take a long time to teach Mrs. Ruddle the good servant's hall manner. "And I found the other vegetable dish, only it's broke." "Very good. You can take these glasses out and wash them. There don't seem to be any decanters." "Never you mind that, Mr. Bunter. I'll soon have them bottles clean." "Bottles?" said Bunter. "What bottles?" A frightful suspicion thrust to his brain. "What have you got there?" "Why," said Mrs. Ruddle, "one of them dirty old bottles you brought along with you." She displayed her booty in triumph. "Such a state as they're in, all over whitewash." Bunter's world reeled about him, and he clutched at the corner of the settle. "Oh, my God! You couldn't put a thing like that on the table, could you now?" "Woman!" cried Bunter, and snatched the bottle from her. "That is the Coman 96. "Oh, is it?" said Mrs. Ruddle, mystified. "There now. I thought it was something to drink." Bunter controlled himself with difficulty. The cases had been left in the pantry for safety. The police were in and out of the cellar, but by all the laws of England a man's pantry was his own. He said in a trembling voice, "You have not, I trust, handled any of the other bottles?" "Only to unpack 'em and set 'em right side up," Mrs. Ruddle assured him cheerfully. "Them cases'll come in handy for kindling." "God's truth!" cried Bunter. The mask came off him all in one piece, and nature, red in tooth and claw, leapt like a tiger from ambush. "God's truth! Would you believe it? All his lordship's vintage port." He lifted shaking hands to heaven. "You lousy old nosy parking bitch! You ignorant interfering old bism! Who told you to go poking your long nose into my pantry?" "Really, Mr. Bunter," said Mrs. Ruddle. "Go to it," said Crutchley with relish. "Here's someone at the front door." "Hop it out of here," stormed Bunter, unheeding, "before I take the skin off you." "Well, I'm sure, how was I to know?" "Get out!" Mrs. Ruddle retired, but with dignity. Such manners! "Put your flat foot right into it that time, Ma," observed Crutchley. He grinned. Mrs. Ruddle turned in the doorway. "People can do their own dirty work after this," she remarked witheringly, and departed. Bunter took up the violated bottle of port and cradled it mournfully in his arm. "All the port! All the port! 2.5 dozen all shook up to blazes, and his lordship bringing it down in the back of the car, driving as tender and careful as it was a baby in arms." "Well," said Crutchley, "that's a miracle, judging by the way he went to Pegford this afternoon. Nearly blew me and the old taxi off the road. Not a drop fit to drink for a fortnight, and him looking forward to his glass after dinner." "Well," said Crutchley again, "with philosophy we keep for other men's fortunes. He's unlucky, that's all." Bunter uttered a Cassandra-like cry. "Oh, there's a curse upon this house!" As he turned, the door was flung violently open to admit Miss Twitterton, who shrank back with a small scream on receiving this blast of eloquence full in the face. "Here's Miss Twitterton," said Mrs. Ruddle unnecessarily, and banged out. "Oh, dear," gasped the poor lady. Oh, I beg your pardon. Is Lady Peter at home? I've just brought her, I suppose they're out. Mrs. Ruddle is so stupid, perhaps—" She looked appealingly from one man to the other. Bunter, pulling himself together, recaptured his mask, and this stony metamorphosis put the finishing touch to Miss Twitterton's discomfort. "If it isn't troubling you too much, Mr. Bunter, would you be so kind as to tell Lady Peter that I brought her a few eggs from my own hens?" "Certainly, Miss Twitterton." The social solecism had been committed and could not now be redeemed. He received the basket with the condescending kindness due from my lord's butler to a humble dependent of the house. "The Buff Orpingtons," explained Miss Twitterton, they lay such pretty brown eggs, don't they? And I thought perhaps her ladyship will greatly appreciate the attention. Would you care to wait?" Oh, thank you. Well, I hardly know. I am expecting them back very shortly from the vicarage." "Oh," said Miss Twitterton. "Yes." She sat down rather helplessly on the proffered chair. "I meant just to hand the basket to Mrs. Ruddle, but she seems very much put about." Crutchley gave a short laugh. He'd made one or two attempts at escape, but Bunter and Miss Twitterton were between him and the door, and now he appeared to resign himself. Bunter seemed glad of the opportunity for an explanation. "I have been very much put out, Miss Twitterton. Mrs. Ruddle has violently agitated all his lordship's vintage port, just as it was settling down nicely after the journey." "Oh,
"How dreadful!" cried Miss Twitterton, her sympathetic mind grasping that the disaster, however incomprehensible, was of the first magnitude. "Is it all spoilt? I believe they have some very good port wine at the Pig and Whistle, only it's rather expensive, 5 shillings and 6pence a bottle, and nothing on the empties." "I fear," said Mr. Bunter, "that would scarcely meet the case." "Or if they would like some of my parsnip wine, I should be delighted to." "Ho, ho," said Crutchley. He jerked his thumb at the bottle in Bunter's arms. "What does that stand his nibs in for?" Bunter could bear no more. He turned to go. 240 shillings the dozen. "Cripes," said Crutchley. Miss Twitterton could not believe her ears. "The dozen what?" "Bottles," said Bunter. He went out, shattered, with drooping shoulders, and shut the door decisively. Miss Twitterton, reckoning rapidly on her fingers, turned in dismay to Crutchley, who stood with a derisive smile, making no further effort to avoid the interview. 204! 17 shillings a bottle! Oh, it's impossible! It's wicked!" "Yeah, cut above you and me, ain't it? Bah, there's a chap could give away £40 out of his pocket and never miss it. But does he? No." He strolled over to the hearth and spat eloquently into the fire. "Oh, Frank, you mustn't be so bitter. You couldn't expect Lord Peter—" "Lord Peter! Who are you to be calling him by his pet name? Think you're somebody, don't you?" "That is the correct way to speak of him," said Miss Twitterton, drawing herself up a little. "I know quite well how to address people of rank." "Oh, yes," replied the gardener sarcastically. "I dessay. And you say Mister to his blasted valet. Come off it, Miguel. It's me lord for you, same as for rest of us. I know your mother was a schoolteacher, all right, and your father was old Ted Baker's cowman. If she married beneath her, it ain't nothing to be stuck up about." "I'm sure," Miss Twitterton's voice trembled, "you are the last person that ought to be saying such a thing to me." Crutchley's face lowered. "That's it, is it? Trying to make out you've been lowering yourself by associating with me, eh? All right. You go and hobnob with the gentry. Lord Peter!" He thrust his hands deep down in his pockets and strode irritably towards the window. His determination to work up a quarrel was so evident that even Miss Twitterton could not mistake it. It could have only one explanation. With fatal archness, she wagged a reproving finger. "Why, Frank, you silly old thing, I believe you're jealous." "Jealous?" He looked at her and began to laugh. It was not a pleasant laugh, though it showed all his teeth. "That's good. That's rich, that is. What's the idea, starting to make eyes at his lordship now?" "Frank, he's a married man. How can you say such things?" "Oh, he's married, all right. Tied up good and proper. Head well in the noose. Yes, darling. No, darling. Cuddle me quick, darling. Pretty, ain't it?" Miss Twitterton thought it was pretty, and said so. "I am sure it's beautiful to see two people so devoted to one another. Quite a romance in high life. Like to be in her shoes, wouldn't you?" "You don't really think I'd want to change places with anybody?" cried Miss Twitterton. "But, oh, Frank, if only you and I could get married at once." "Ah, yes," said Crutchley, with a kind of satisfaction. "Your Uncle Noakes has put a bit of a spoke in that wheel, ain't he?" "Oh, I've been trying all day to see you and talk over what we were to do." "What we're going to do?" "It isn't for myself, Frank. I'd work my fingers to the bone for you, and a fat lot of good that'd do. How about my garage? If it hadn't been for your soft soap, I'd have got my 40 quid out of the old devil months ago." Miss Twitterton quailed before his angry eyes. "Oh, please don't be so angry with me. We couldn't either of us know, and... oh, there's another terrible thing." "What's up now?" I'd been saving up a little bit. Just a little here and there, you know, and I got close on £50 put away in the savings bank." £50, eh?" said Crutchley, his tone softening a little. "Well, that's a tidy little bit." "Well, I meant it for the garage. There was to be a surprise for you." "Well, and what's gone wrong with it?" The sight of her imploring eyes and twitching, bony hands brought back his irritation. "Post office gone bust?"
I lent it to Uncle. He said he was short. People hadn't paid their bills." "Well," said Crutchley with impatience, "you got a receipt for it, I suppose?" Excitement seized him. "That's your money. They can't get at that. You have it out of them. You got a receipt for it. You give me the receipt and I'll settle with that McBride. That'll cover my 40 quid anyhow." "But I never thought to ask Uncle for a receipt. Not between relations. How could I?" "You never thought? Nothing on paper? Of all the blasted fools!" "Oh, Frank, dear, I'm so sorry. Everything seems to have gone wrong. But you know you never dreamt any more than I did." "No, or I'd have acted a bit different, I can tell you." He ground his teeth savagely and struck a log on the hearth with his heel so that the sparks flew. Miss Twitterton watched him miserably. Then a new hope came to sustain her. "Frank, listen. Perhaps Lord Peter might lend you the money to start the garage. He's ever so rich." Crutchley considered this. Born rich and born soft were to him the same thing. It was possible, if he made a good impression, though it did mean truckling to a blasted title. "That's a fact," he admitted. "He might." In a rosy flush, Miss Twitterton saw the possibility as an accomplished fact. Her eager wishes flew ahead into a brilliant future. "I'm sure he would. We could get married at once and have that little corner cottage, you know, on the main road where you said. And there'd be ever so many cars stopping there, and I could help quite a lot with my Buff Orpingtons." "You and your Buff Orpingtons!" "And I could give piano lessons again. I know I could get pupils at the station master's little Elsie." "Little Elsie's bottom. Now see here, Aggie, it's time we get down to brass tacks. You and me getting spliced with the idea of coming into your uncle's money, that's one thing, see? That's business. But if there's no money from you, it's off. You get that?" Miss Twitterton uttered a faint bleat. He went on brutally. "A man that's starting in life wants a wife, see? A nice little bit to come home to. Someone he can cuddle. Not a skinny old hen with a brood of Buff Orpingtons." "Oh, how can you speak like that?" He caught her roughly by the shoulder and twisted her round to face the mirror with the painted roses. "Look at yourself in the glass, you old fool. Talk about a man marrying his grandmother." She shrank back and he pushed her from him. "Coming the schoolmarm over me with your mind your manners, Frank, and mind your H's, and bum-sucking round to his lordship. Frank so clever. Tchah! Making me look a blasted fool." "I only wanted to help you get on." "Yes, showing me off like as if I was your belongings. You'd like to take me up to bed like the silver teapot, and so the teapot would be about as much use to you, I'd reckon." Miss Twitterton put her hands over her ears. "I won't listen. I won't listen to you. You're mad. Thought you'd bought me with your uncle's money, didn't you? Well, where is it?" "How can you be so cruel? After all I've done for you."
"You've done for me, all right. Made me a laughing-stock and got me into a blasted mess. I suppose you've been blabbering about all over the place as we was only waiting for the vicar to put up the banns."
"I never said a word. Truly, truly, I never have."
"Oh, ain't you? Well, you should have heard old Ruddle talk."
"And if I had," cried Miss Twitterton with a last desperate burst of spirit, "why shouldn't I? You've told me over and over again you were fond of me. You said you were."
"Oh, can that row!"
"But you did say so. Oh, you can't be so cruel. You don't know. You don't know, Frank, please, dear Frank. I know it's been a dreadful disappointment, but you can't mean this. You can't. Oh, do be kind to me, Frank. I love you so." In frantic appeal she flung herself into his arms, and the contact with her damp cheeks and stringy body drove him to an ugly fury.
"Damn you, get off! Take your blasted claws out of my neck! Shut up! I'm sick and tired of the sight of you!" He wrenched her loose and flung her heavily upon the settle, bruising her and knocking her hat grotesquely over one ear. As he looked at her with a sort of delight in her helpless absurdity and her snuffling humiliation, the deep roar of the Daimler's exhaust zoomed up to the gate and stopped. The latch clicked, and steps came along the path. Miss Twitterton sobbed and gulped, hunting vaguely for her handkerchief. "Hell's bells," said Crutchley, "they're coming in." Above the creak of the gravel came the sound of two voices singing together softly. Et ma jolie colombe qui chante jour et nuit, et ma jolie colombe qui chante jour et nuit, qui chante pour les filles qui n'ont pas de mari. Auprès de ma blonde qu'il fait bon, fait bon, fait bon. Auprès de ma blonde qu'il fait bon dormir. "Get up, you old fool," said Crutchley, hunting in a hurry for his cap. Qui chante pour les filles qui n'ont pas de mari, qui chante pour les filles qui n'ont pas de mari. He found the cap on the windowsill and pulled it on with a jerk. "You better clear out sharp, I'm off." The woman's voice rang out alone and exultant. "Pour moi ne chante guère qu'à Jean et Angelie." The tune, if not the words, stabbed Miss Twitterton into a consciousness of that insolent triumph, and she stirred wretchedly on the hard settle as the duet was joined again. Auprès de ma blonde qu'il fait bon, fait bon, fait bon. Auprès de ma blonde qu'il fait bon dormir. She lifted a blotched and woebegone face, but Crutchley was gone, and the words of the song came back to her. Her mother, the schoolmistress, had had it in that little book of French songs, though of course it was not a thing one could teach the schoolchildren. There were voices in the passage outside. "Oh, Crutchley!" Casual and commanding. "You can put the car away." And Crutchley's colourless and respectful, as though it didn't know how to use cruel words, "Very good, my lord." Which way out? Miss Twitterton dabbed the tears from her face. Not into that passage among them all, with Frank there, and Bunter perhaps coming out of the kitchen, and, oh, what would Lord Peter think? "Anything further tonight, my lord?" The door-knob moved under his hand, then her ladyship's voice, warm and friendly. "Good night, Crutchley." "Good night, my lord. Good night, my lady." Seized with panic, Miss Twitterton fled blindly up the bedroom stair as the door opened.